Hi! Oh, someone's got a tan. I love it. Come on in. This is where the chefs sit. I think they have a break soon. Let me check.
Well, hello there.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome to A Minor Diner, where we take a recent music release, we give it a theme, and pair it with two other works of art to create a 3-course meal. We've got our appetizer, an entree, and a dessert to make our meal du mois, our meal of the month. I am your base chef, Zach, and I'm here with my treble chef, Jesse, who is probably going to be our new resident lifeguard. Am I right?
Yeah, it's so funny.
Sorry about the water, everyone. We've just got a lake out there where the parking lot should be. What's going?
It's a pond.
Yeah, and what is a pond doing there?
Construction on the parking lot hit an aquifer. I guess it's a low water table, or is it a high water table? I don't remember which is which.
Well, there's your problem right there.
Yeah.
Are you okay? It's just a little water.
No, it's a lot of water. And submerged beneath it rest my dreams.
Oh, dear. I didn't know this was going to be a thing.
I mean, we're going to be 30 soon, and what do we have to show for it? The most prestigious restaurant in the history of civilization. So what? No one can park here. I just feel like the light has gone out from my life.
Jesse, I'm beginning to feel like this isn't just about a parking lot. You know, it's just an obstacle, though. It's something that life throws at you. It's just some water. We'll deal with it. Maybe getting older means that you can look into your difficulties and find something worthwhile. Like earlier, I was out there looking at, that lake outside, and I actually saw some little fish and a turtle. And I think both of those could metaphorically represent...
Whoa, fishes and turtles? Like Finding Nemo? I want to see.
No. Hang on. We've got a meal to serve our customers here.
You never let me do anything fun.
Maybe after.
Promise?
We'll see.
That always means no. But it is a good concept, which brings us to our theme this month. Measured maturity.
It's common to criticize people for their immature behavior, like shirking your restaurant duties to go out for a swim.
Come on, it's hot. The diners can come out too.
But on the other hand, if you take life too seriously, you end up waking up one day, 42 years old in a forest in Goa, your hair dreadlocked, all your belongings missing, and you're surrounded by shirtless British insurance agents, just because you never let loose when you were younger.
This month's meal was kickstarted by an imported package of chocolate ice cream mochi, Wink, the third album by Nagoya, Japan's Chai. We've paired this carefree electropop release with a 2015 documentary and a 1967 theme park attraction.
All right, so for this month's meal du mois, we've got Measured Maturity, and we're starting with the appetizer. This is the new album by the Japanese all-female rock electropop band Chai. Their new album is called Wink. They're a 4-piece band from Nagoya, Japan. They've got members Yuna, Yuki, and twins Mana and Kana. And these are not their real names, apparently, but this is what they go by.
Fair enough.
This is their third album. They released Pink in 2017. They released Punk in 2019. And here we are in 2021 with Wink. We've got a theme
We
going.
do. And so we are eagerly awaiting their fourth album, Wunk.
Yes.
I'm assuming in 2023.
2023's Wunk. But yeah, so Chai, kind of interesting. They started back Pink, their first album, kind of like an indie rock, indie pop, kind of had some like dance punk leanings. The rhythm section, like the bass and the drums, very funky. Even while they're having these kind of like childish, fun little songs about this and that. This new album is more like electropop leaning. It reminded me of kind of K-pop trends here and there, but also kind of a lot of deep house leanings. They say that Gorillaz and Basement Jacks are some of their like inspirations. So, and you can definitely hear that.
Yeah, like the sound is pretty, like you've described, their earlier efforts, not to say that they're more focused or not, but this one definitely has like a pretty wide mixture of sounds and I guess apparent influences. And yeah, it's all sort of revolving around not liberation tied to any sort of one, like on behalf of their ethnicity or gender or anything like that, but this sort of like spirit of playfulness or not to be so direct with like maturity, but the songwriting and the approach that they take, like matching those lyrics to those compositions. Yeah, it's always, even when it's a slow tempo, it's still kind of bouncy and fun all the time.
Yeah. Chai, if you were to describe them in one word, that one word would probably be fun. Which is kind of funny because one of the singles, the advanced singles for this album is called Nobody Knows That We're Fun.
Yeah.
But we do. We know that of you.
Yes,
we
if
know that
we
of
know
you, Chai.
anything of Chai, you guys are fun. Yeah, and there's like this, because I guess I would want your take on it because with, not to just go straight into like super heady topics or whatever.
Oh, we're going straight in.
But yeah, we are a globalized like world now, and so you can't really do anything in a pocket or on an island anymore. And there's like this trend, you could call it in pop music at least, and we'll call pop music anything that you're likely to hear on the radio or TV or movies, not even just the genre itself. There's like this trend that everything is like pretty good and everything is fine and you're pretty good and everything you do is good and life is like good, and it's all like we've talked on previous meals of it's not very healthy to, if you're sad, listen to like nothing but sad music that confirms that worldview. But then you get artists like Chai where I think they do well, but like there's this weird songwriting approach, almost like a 1950s of like, well, she's my gal and we're going to go to the root beer like bar or whatever. And so there's this assumption that life can only be this. And it's like inherently not that interesting. And they have a weird, I don't want to say it's extremely interesting, their songwriting or anything like that.
No.
But they're almost taking that and trying to move it somewhere that's like, everything's fine and no one should feel bad about anything ever, but like where's the substance? And they kind of reach for it.
Yeah, they kind of reach for it here and there. I've got two points. Just to start out, like you talk about pop music kind of being, escapism a lot of the time. But interestingly enough, I guess maybe we'll just say post-Lord or whatever. Like pop music these days is very not escapist. I recently read an article that was saying that now that things are starting to open up in terms of COVID in the United States, where it feels like, okay, we're opening everything up and everything's going back to normal, that this article was saying that for the first time in a while, they're expecting like summer pop hits not to be like downbeat and kind of talking about how life has problems. Like it's gonna almost be a return to the like Katy Perry style, like everything's gonna be okay, California girls.
Sure.
And Chai are very much that. Like everything's gonna be fine. Let's have some fun. But I feel like we have an idea of based on the media that we get from Japan, there's this word kawaii, which is Japanese for cute, and we think of especially art involving Japanese women as very kind of cute and childish and childlike, which I would argue does some bad things.
Yes.
I don't think that's a negative, necessarily like positive thing for Japanese women or our our thoughts towards them, I guess.
Yeah.
But so Chai, they describe their musical genre as neo kawaii, so the new cute. And I'm gonna go off for a minute and quote Mana, one of the four members of Chai.
Do you know what she does in the?
I
which
believe
one
she is the main, like, they all sing,
Yeah.
but she's like the main singer
Okay.
and potentially main songwriter. I'm not sure.
Cool.
But she says, in Japan, growing up as a Japanese woman, the word kawaii is equal to beautiful in Japan. Kawaii is the biggest form of a compliment for a woman. There are certain features like larger eyes or fairer skin, mostly Western features, that are seen as desirable. For us, growing up not having those features, we were always considered unattractive. When you go to school in Japan, girls go to school every day trying to live up to this word. For us, we don't believe kawaii should be set with set features. It should be more open and not so narrow. So we created the word neo kawaii for people who don't have those features. For us standing at the top, it can give others confidence that you can be on top too, even if you don't have those features. You don't have that look. And I found that interesting. It was interesting to read interviews with the people in this band, because I feel like if you just listen to the album, you would very much get the vibe of like, oh, this is just this is cute.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like cuteness, and those Japanese and their cute music. But reading interviews with the band, like, there is that cuteness, and they get that, and they are playing into that to an extent, but they're also like trying to kind of do it their own way, do it of their own accord, I guess, because there's J-pop or whatever, like big J-pop or big K-pop, which is kind of terrifying, and everybody looks the same, and all the songs are about boys or whatever, and some of them are about female empowerment, but we're gonna do it in a very straight down the line way. But here, like, there's love songs, but the love songs are not about boys. They're love songs about like donuts.
Yeah, and that's like, because narrowing into that point, but addressing one of your first things there, advertising wise, and whatever you want to call it, economically, the word teenager didn't even exist until like the 40s, 50s, at least in America. And America is like the most prosperous nation at the time, and the only one with an actual like middle class. And so then all art, I feel, and this could be an insanely obvious point that everyone agrees with, but I'm going to vocalize it. But all art and all commerce and all everything is directed at, like, if you're between the ages of like 15 and 22, everything is for you.
Yeah.
And then after that, get out of line. Like,
Yeah,
there's a new crop in
Yeah.
here. And things like this, like Chai, I can agree with to a certain extent. Like, their idealism in that sort of way of like, we're going to redefine what it is to be cute and this and that, feels a lot like over here certain liberation movements in any form of art, with whatever you're liberating from, where it's all very good in spirit, but then I find that it's like, okay, but you're still like on this 1940s, like, because there's this song, what's the second one? Chocolate Chip, right?
Maybe Chocolate Chips.
Yeah. She's singing about basically that her freckles or moles.
That she was always like, she was always self-conscious about her moles.
Yeah. And then embraced like, no, those are like chocolate chips. And like whoever I'm with, my romantic partner, like, will appreciate me as the chocolate chip cookie that I am. And it's like, okay, that's a bit like we've talked the aesthetics of attraction before. And it's like, on one hand, I am so unbelievably like in love with that. Like, that's perfect. Yes. Like, very, very good. But also I'm really hoping this is track 2. I hope there's some tracks beyond like materialistic, like initial aesthetic.
Totally.
Because like you're saying, kawaii is cute, and it's very cute in the American way, where we look at it almost like you said derogatorily, where you're 25 and you're looking at anime and it's like, no, mom, it's not anime, it's kawaii. It's like it's how they express themselves. But it is like, to what end with this cuteness? And I feel that I'd have to go back and listen to their earlier work, but there's this sort of, what I'm getting at is like, let's say you take K-pop, and we will have a particularly acidic meal for you when we get to a K-pop.
Oh, I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
That'll be like a 9-hour episode. But like, you have that, and then let's say you had like a hyper intelligent, very smart satire group that came out and also did K-pop.
Yeah.
I don't think audiences are stupid and culture is stupid, but it almost becomes like, okay, but if you're serving 9/10 of the same function all of a sudden, it's almost indecipherable from what you're mocking or parodying. And so like, I would rather people listen to an artist like Chai because it's fun and dynamic and interesting, but then I would wonder where this is going to go, this like neo-kawaii movement, and what they're going to do with that redefinition of cuteness.
Totally, yeah. Because so if the name of this meal is measured maturity, I just think this is such a perfect piece to look at that through, like a perfect lens to look at that conversation about how maturity and immaturity, how you can kind of tread that line, and treading that line is hard, and it's very easy to go the wrong way in one or the other direction. Because listening to this record, it starts out and the first song is called Donuts Mind If I Do, which is the worst pun we've ever had on this show. But it is a love song about donuts. So the lyrics, こんなにも好きな気持ちがある. I get such a good feeling. It makes my body better. Keep going on. Don't mind if I do. Donuts mind if I do.
And this is just to comment on it really quick. This is like one point that I agree with the government of North Korea on. Is that I know I've mentioned my affinity for that Wikipedia page before, but they have there are two different dialects in Korea.
Yeah.
The North Korean and the South Korean one. And they call South Korean like basic Korean, and they call North Korean cultured Korean. And you think, oh, that's pretty pretentious, and of course they'd say that, but they say no, because basic Korean has infinitely too many borrowed words from like American and Chinese imperialized whatever. Like, this is pure Korean. And I'm no Korean nationalist, but when I listen to Chai, there's stuff like that of like, donuts mind if I do, and, it's like, and you're trying to distance from kawaii. Okay, cool.
So yeah, and it's interesting. About, I would say probably 50-50 of the lyrics are split pretty evenly between Japanese and English.
Yeah.
And I mean, listening to interviews, it's clear that Chai are not fluent in English by any stretch of the imagination. So like a lot of Japanese bands do, and Korean groups, J-pop, K-pop is very heavy on this, as well as some like alternative rock groups from both of the countries. They kind of switch willy-nilly between their home language and their second language, the language of commerce, English. My Japanese is also by no stretch of the imagination fluent, but it is okay. It's not wonderful, but like, so normally if I'm reading Japanese, I'm like, I almost vaguely get what this is saying, but I'm also not nearly fluent enough to like read a newspaper in Japan. But like looking through these Chai lyrics, even as someone with my level of Japanese, I was like, no, I actually get pretty much all of this.
Wow.
It's like, it's really, the Japanese is very kind of basic, like it doesn't go that deep into artistic metaphors and all of this
Nuance,
stuff.
yeah.
And the English is also exactly the same, that it keeps pretty surface level. So there is one song called Ping Pong.
Yep.
The song Ping Pong is about playing ping pong, but it's about playing ping pong at an onsen, like a Japanese hot spring, which I guess is uniquely Japanese because you can play ping pong at a hot spring there, which I don't think you can really do in America. But the lyrics go, "Ofuro hairo," let's go to the onsen, let's go to the hot spring. "Kono mama ii," like this way is good, basically. And then in English, "How was your weekend?" And then it goes, "Ofuro de ping pong," play ping pong at the onsen. "So you and me." And that's what it is.
and that's because this is like, it's a subjective line for everybody, what this balance is of like, okay, what is nonsense and what is art that is to be hung up in a museum. Like you can't trend too much towards either of those. You need the easy, light stuff to keep the juices of your brain going, but then also something to put in those juices. And like, I guess I would wonder your take on that, because I know that a lot of like historically speaking, like East Asian songs are pretty simple when it comes to lyrics, in the same way that like old English songs are, like medieval England.
Yeah.
And it's like where those were exalting God or the emperor or whatever it was in whatever country. I do have like a threshold of like what a song subject matter should be, because like I listen to like a lot of canto pop from like Hong Kong in the 70s, 80s, and that's all very, I'm beautiful, you're beautiful, and it's like a disco like in America, and isn't that great and whatever, and that's fine. But then I do feel that when you're measuring maturity, it's almost this, because how old are they by this point? Because they started in 2012, so I'd presume they're upper 20s or something, if not close to 30.
I am not entirely sure.
Yeah, because they're like, and this is somewhat, I don't want to say their American debut by any means, but they're signed to an American label. And I just wonder, like you bring up Lorde, and there's figures like Billie Eilish as well, where I almost see them as like two sides of the same coin, where they're serving a mood rather than like an actual substantial point, which is fine. I think The Weeknd does that, or I always bring up The Weeknd. Whoever like, who's ever like a pop person that exists today. But like Donuts, Mind If I Do, and maybe Chocolate Chips are interesting, and they also both. Well, some of these songs feature like, I'm pretty sure they're all American, but
I think so.
But collaborative artists, and yeah, there's this. It's weird to figure out like, oh, so what is the artistic statement here? I don't necessarily agree or disagree, but I would really prefer if you have one. And so, what is Wink?
Yeah, what is Wink? And the interview was they were talking about why they named it Wink, and it's like, well, we started with Pink, and that was our I album, because it was an album for I, and then we changed it to Punk because that's a U, and this because this was an album for you, and now Wink, even though it's WI, this is an album for we. This is an album for all of us. This is an album for all of us together. And Mana, the main songwriter, refers to the album as my very good friend,
which is because like. Yeah, between their roots with like Shinto and everything, I do love Japan for like how seriously they take everything. But then I would love if that was like ingrained in the lyrics somewhere, because I think that's beautiful. But also, I guess that makes sense now that you say it out loud, because it's half and half for kind of everybody, and English is kind of the, whatever you call that, lingua franca of the world, that everyone kind of speaks English as a second language. And that is mature. It's just weird. I feel that they're overly mature for what they're actually doing.
It's so bizarre, and that's why I think that neo kawaii word is so interesting, because like you read articles about the band, and a lot of them are like, Chai are redefining cute. And I'm like, I don't think they are.
Yes.
I really think you're looking a little bit too deeply into this. But watching interviews with them, I was actually struck at like I don't know. They're not coming across as like silly or like young girls, because like, there's a song here called Karaage, which just means fried chicken, and the whole song is about fried chicken. And it's about mayonnaise and cheese sauce on your fried chicken. And it's like, this is dumb. Like, this is really childish and kind of stupid. Charming while also being childish and stupid. But like in interviews, they're like very well spoken, and they've got like good things to say and like really interesting like takes on why they're doing what they're doing. And I'm like, okay, like there is some thought behind this, and they're undeniably talented musicians.
Yeah.
Like there's more really cool kind of rhythmic work in their first album. Pink is, I think, quite good. And like there's some bass and drum parts in that I'm like, heck yes. Like these girls are making J-pop, but the bassist and drummer don't know they're making J-pop. Yeah. They're over here making like a Talking Heads funk album.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And like that's kind of stripped away in this album because it's more of an electropop. But like, I don't know, to switch gears a little bit, like listening to the album.
Yeah.
I like the first couple songs, and then like around track 3 or 4, whatever track Action is, Action
3
kills. Action is very good. And then like the couple tracks after that. So let me pull up a track list real quick. Action and Ping Pong and Nobody Knows We Are Fun. So tracks 3 through 6, I think bang. Yeah. They're really good. And every time I listen to the album, I find myself being like incredibly charmed by like the first half of this album. And then I don't know if it is the songwriting or if it's just like this is my tolerance for this kawaii sound, but the back half of the album drops off entirely for me.
I agree, because it feels like because it's a weird sort of the medium gets lost in the message a little bit when you're in 2021 trying to listen to old music. So say you're 17 and branching out. I'm going to go listen to an 80s or 70s album. They're not cognizant of the fact that there is a side A and a side B, and those are different artistic statements. Yeah. And this feels like one of those. There's 12 tracks, and I would agree. I think I drop off as well around It's Vitamin C. Yep. Track number 7, and then it almost just like, not even in terms of song quality, but like the tone and the everything about it plummets after that.
Yeah,
it gets softer and slower, and it's like this weird. I'm not sure, because like I didn't know that translated to fried chicken, and it's about all this sort of stuff, because that's what I mean of like, so what are we literally doing here? Because there's I love city pop, like Japanese city pop. It's I think it's all good. It all sounds exactly the same, but it works. It's so good. There's like this weird perverse feeling to it that's like, oh, this is a bubble that you don't realize is about to pop. Your economy's killing it, and you're like the second biggest GDP in the world, and then it's about to stagnate, and it has never recovered since. Yeah. And it's like you're doing this weird like Manhattan corporate style music basically, but it makes sense. It like always knows exactly what it is. Of like, I'm here with you on a beach, and we got money, and we're happy, and what a mood! It's a sunset.
What a mood! It's a sunset. I think both of those are city pop albums.
And then there's like Japanese jazz, and they have all of every different form of art, but then. Yeah, like this is like, okay, but what am I supposed to do with this? Because it's almost back to the prehistoric notion of music of like, did we just win a battle? Are we about to go to battle? Are we praying for rain? Like, what do we, like, it's all good, but what am I supposed to actually do with it? This is like, I understand I am so far removed from who this is intended for. I mean, it is a Wii
it's
record,
a Wii album.
As she said, yeah. But it's also like, who's that band? Trico, right? Is that how you pronounce them? Yeah. Trico is not even anything remotely like this, but they're the same sort of general ethos of at the time they were all-female group that's like gonna redefine how things are done in a certain sort of way. And I kind of feel like, okay, I can put that on this spot on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I understand when I can go to that. I don't know if I find myself, like, it's fun to listen to those first 7 songs, but I can't imagine, like, oh, I'm going to throw on Wink again and listen to Wink, because I don't know what mood I'm going to have to be in or what context I would play it for.
Yeah, because I mean, it's kind of interesting because it's like, so in terms of measured maturity, there are songs that, like, there's a lot of so to go fucking full on extreme. You ever listen to Kyori Pamyu Pamyu?
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Like,
I'd probably recognize it. Yeah.
you would recognize it if you heard it, probably. It is like, she in her heyday specialized in like fucking extreme J-pop, like the the most bubbly. Like, this is before hyperpop existed, but it was almost like proto hyperpop. It was like, this is insane, and it is so sugary to be almost nauseous. But there's a place for that for me. Like,
Right.
I like a little bit of the, like, that childish, like, this is dumb, and I love it. Pon
Yeah.
Pon Pon is a perfect song, and I can put it on and jam in my car. But do I listen to an entire Kyori Pamyu Pamyu album? Almost never. It's
Interesting.
intolerable.
Right. Too much. Too
Yeah.
often. Yeah.
And like, Chai is not that. Chai is not super bubbly. They're not like super, super sweet. But they're like semi-sweet chocolate chips, I guess. And at a certain point, you eat too many semi-sweet chocolate chips, and you still get sick, I guess. And that, listening to the entire album, by the end of it, I want to listen to something else.
That's, I think, a pretty perfect metaphor. Is like that they're like half strength. They're like diet chocolate chip cookies, where it's like, okay, that's not what I'm going to reach for if I want a chocolate chip cookie. But also, when I do it, I'm going to get in trouble because I'm eating the entire bowl, eating the entire bag in one sitting, and I don't feel good, and it wasn't even my first choice kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a very good album, like, in terms of...
I like it.
like-
I feel like we're...
No, we're just...
I feel like we're not
Yeah.
selling it at all.
No.
It's good.
Yeah.
I would recommend this album, and it's also like, I don't want to use the term lowbrow, but it's like, it's something that I could just like, I could recommend to anybody, and they would all probably like it. I could put half these songs on a playlist at a party, or you're at the pool, or you're just like hanging out at your house with 2 or 3 other people, and they would go over in all of those situations.
I agree.
Like, it works. Like, it's good music pretty objectively. But then in terms of that measured maturity, there's like, I love a little bit of immaturity. I think people generally take their life too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think having a little bit of that kind of childlike, like, wonder or just amazement, or just like not overthinking everything, is like a really, really good habit to have. But then sometimes, like, you need to be mature sometimes. Like, you need to actually make decisions. You need to think about things. You need to live your life a certain way.
Yes.
And this is surface level enough that I'm like, I like this, but this is never going to be like a favorite of mine.
Yeah, because I would say it's like the musical equivalent of, like, you're with your friend or romantic partner or family member or whatever, of like, you're going to the grocery store and they have that attitude of like, let's go on an adventure to the grocery store. And it's like, okay, some things can just be things, and then we can save adventures for like actual adventures or whatever. Yeah, where it's like, it's fine and it's good. And I especially agree, you could play this in any pot or any playlist and just kill, because they are very good songs.
Yeah.
But when it comes to measuring that maturity or finding what level of maturity is appropriate for whatever dish, I think that Wink is, I would almost prefer just either take out all the sugar or put in a lot more sugar.
Yeah. This conversation can also be applied to your everyday life and how you live, and how you measure your own maturity. And we're gonna look at that a little bit deeper, I think, in our entree. A Minor Diner would not be possible without its sponsors. This month, we're proud to partner with Extreme Boards. 5 o'clock p.m. Your meeting on Synergy is about to end. You look at the clock. It's 5 o'clock p.m. Your palms start to sweat because you know you're this close to throwing that briefcase in your Tesla and taking out your Extreme Board. Extreme Boards, the skateboarding company for you. Don't look out your window at those 15-year-olds at the skate park, nostalgic for your long-lost youth ever again. Now, you can be the 30-year-old at the skate park. Our ergonomic wheel design keeps your old knees comfortable, and our helmets keep you looking swag, while ensuring you won't have to pay your health insurance deductible over a traumatic head injury. Extreme Boards. Drop back into your youth from your window office. Because who knows? Maybe Stacy from HR will see you. Extreme Boards.
You love your child, but little Jimmy and tiny Brooke are celebrating their 5th birthdays this year, and you know it's about time they tear down their treehouse, come back from Candyland, and start building their bridge to financial freedom. Toddler Trading, the new board game that teaches your young ones how to comfortably skip around the playground of Dow Jones and the S&P 500. Complete day trading quests, chat with your new broker buddies, and contextualize your bankruptcy into a taxpayer-subsidized bailout whoopsie. You even get to ring the bell. After all, at 8 years old, in the American territory of Puerto Rico, you can legally own an LLC. So get little Aiden learning the tricks of the trade before it's too late. Toddler Trading. Playtime is over.
So, most of us have pretty big dreams when we're children. For example, I wrote stories and I wanted to be a published author. I thought I was going to be a published author when I was, 10 years old or whatever. Others want to be astronauts, filmmakers, rappers. Maybe they just want to be TikTok influencers. But for most of us, those dreams remain dreams. And most of us don't even try that hard to make those dreams reality. But our entree for this measured maturity meal du mois is a story of a few childhood friends from Mississippi in the 1980s that made their dream reality.
I'll give you this, it's somebody's dream.
It's somebody's dream.
Yeah.
So the dish in question is a 2015 documentary. The name is Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made. The documentary starts in the 1980s. Like I said, we've got 3 friends from Mississippi. Their names are Eric Zala, Chris Strompoulos, oh dear, and Jason Lamb. And essentially, so they start in 1982, and over the next 7 years, they start when they're about 12 years old. Yeah, they start when they're 12 years old, and over the next 7 summers, spending about $5,000, they recreate, shot for shot, the first Indiana Jones film, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
They were so taken with it and were at that perfect age where they can be aspirational and also so motivated to do something that, they take in the garage, in their backyard, in the back streets or back, dirt roads of Mississippi, seeking to replicate a $20 million movie that Steven Spielberg is doing, like the peak of the peak at the time.
Yeah, the peak of action cinema.
Yes, and for a nothing budget at all. Yes,
yeah.
Not even, they don't even have day jobs or side jobs after school to pay for this.
No, yeah. They say every Christmas, instead of getting toys, they would get props for this movie. Every summer, instead of doing whatever kids do during the summer, I just played fucking video games the entire time. But instead of doing that, they were shooting a movie. Yeah,
and they have. There's a lot of different places because I think you and I are gonna overlap an opinion on probably 80% of this.
Yep.
But then there's this 20%. We'll get into it. But there's this interesting quote in the documentary where they say they kind of, in retrospect, because the documentary follows, the general filmmaking process that they had when they were, teens and prepubescent boys, I guess. But then also follows them today in their 40s, I believe, trying to finish this one. They didn't shoot the airplane scene, the scene out there on the airstrip where the explosions and the guy gets hit with the propeller. Spoiler alert, but
it's an old movie.
Yeah.
You should have seen it by now.
Yeah, Indy is actually 40 years old this year. That's exactly, it came out like around this time of year.
Huh.
Yeah, which is a weird thing to think about.
81, I guess. Dang.
Yeah, it's
Christ.
weird. But yes. But yeah, they are trying to tell the story of how they made it and then why they stopped making it and what stopped them from making it, and then trying to get it restarted again. And it's this weird crossroads, I feel, in like American history where anyone and everyone who grew up in the 80s, or I guess since, will remark as like the 80s being the peak American pop culture, where you get serious blockbusters cranked out basically once a month, like very culturally defining movies and music and all art. And for me, this movie like is a weird, inadvertently, it like addresses this issue of like, what is your childhood?
Yeah.
Because a statement that I take like extreme umbrage with or whatever is when they're remaking a movie and then people like clutch their chests and say, oh, but my childhood is this movie. And like when I was a child, I was out, I know our parking lot is filling up with water as we speak, but maybe I'm not so offended at that because I grew up with like a pond in the backyard catching frogs and doing weird, naturey sort of stuff. And at no point, like I love Fantasia, but if they said, we're going to make it Fantasia, but with like dubstep and even worse, and like we're going to do it like once a year as a new Fantasia movie, I wouldn't feel like, oh, you're just tearing a part of my identity.
Yeah, it doesn't take away the original, like it doesn't take away the childhood, but some people kind of feel like it does.
Yeah, and that's a weird, like there's at no point did they barely mention Last Crusade, that they had seen that one, and so they avoid Temple of Doom, and then whatever.
We don't talk about Temple of Doom.
What's the other one? Crystal Skull.
Oh yeah, Crystal Skull is not mentioned.
Not even a movie.
Shia LaBeouf is never mentioned in this film.
And it's a weird. I just think about it in the way, like I'm sure you do. Like you try to put yourself in those shoes at 12 years old. I like a lot of things. I don't know. I like a lot of things today as an adult, and I know how to maturely take that sacrifice to see out a long-term project. But being 12, like they describe when they're 17, 18, 19, that they're basically doing it out of obligation now.
They're doing it out of obligation, yeah. By, because this is over a course of 7 years. You watch the footage from their adaptation in this documentary, and it's kind of fun. They shot it completely out of order. They just shot it in whatever order they could think to shoot it, basically. So, like, they'll change age like rapidly. You'll have Indiana Jones like in like pre-puberty Indiana Jones in one scene, and then he's like 17 years old, and then he's like a little kid again, and it's kind of fun. But by the end of those 7 years, these three kids fucking hate each other.
Yeah, and they hate it. They don't really mention the movie too much, but it is so like day job for them. Like you're saying, we didn't get a childhood because everyone's birthdays and Christmases were sacrificed to get props that would be weird.
Yeah.
And like their home lives are all disintegrating. For the most part, most of their home lives are disintegrating because they're in Mississippi in the 80s and like having to deal with amicable or unamicable divorces, but then also like overstepping stepfathers and stepmothers and things like that just don't, that cause some pretty like legitimate turmoil, all while trying to because if you've ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, like it's one of those things. Art is subjective. I'm not the biggest fan of Raiders, but like on an objective level, it's probably out of every movie ever made, like the thousands, tens of thousands, it's like top 10 best directed movies of all time. Like it's impossibly perfectly directed.
It's like for what it is.
Yeah.
Like Steven Spielberg knocks it out of the park, right?
Yeah, like-
and obviously has all of the money in the world to knock it out of the park. But like, there's so many iconic sequences, right? I mean, from everybody knows the Boulder sequence.
Yeah.
But just iconic sequence after iconic sequence. And these kids, just do it. They just decide we're just gonna do it. And this is so it's insane now. Like, so looking at it from a 2021 standpoint, it might not be as like amazing, right? It's like, oh well, we can shoot things on our iPhone, we can do a bunch of computer generated stuff to make this and that and the other thing. But like, not only does none of that exist, like they've got like a rented high-8 camera that they're shooting all of this on. Home video doesn't even exist. So like when they started this, there were no VHS tapes. So the only way that they could, because they're shooting this shot for shot, they're taking all of the dialogue. They're not cutting anything. They're trying to remake the movie shot for shot, but they don't have a copy of the movie.
Yeah.
So they sneak in one of the kids on a re-release, an 82 re-release of Raiders of the Lost Ark, sneaks in a tape recorder and records the entire movie, the audio of the entire movie. And then they just like, almost like it was their like Bible. They would like study this for hours, getting all of the lines correct and making like, they made storyboards based on their memories of the movie, and like comic books and photographs about of the film. And it's like, so there's maturity, right?
Yeah.
Maturity is, you and I, we decide, oh, well, we're going to make a movie, okay? We're just going to do it. But then, like, the more time goes on, you're like, well, shit, we need a lot of money to make a movie. And, like, oh, also, we need a lot of people to make a movie. And then, like, nobody's going to watch the movie anyways. Like, why are we doing this in the first place? Like, maturity is logic in a certain way, like thinking everything through, making responsible decisions, making decisions that make sense financially or personally or whatever. This doesn't make any sense. Like any stretch of the imagination, what these kids are doing, it's dumb.
No, it's very, because like on a personal level, like I can't remember exactly the context in which we met, you and I. Like, your honorable basin trouble chefs here. It was sometime in culinary high school, but how whatever my introduction to you was like, you're making movies or whatever. And at that time, we were kind of running with the same group of friends, but not like together. And I was trying to do movies and stuff, I think junior year, senior year. And you do these dumb, ambitious things that are just, it's not for anybody, but you, of course, hope that people are going to watch it.
Yeah.
And like you say, there's an eventual come to terms moment where you measure your expectations, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And like, why I bring that up is because, Dear Diners, there was Zach did a movie. It's the title escapes me, but it is one of the most influential like shots or edits of my career.
This is from my student film while I was in culinary high school, entitled Kung Fu Zombies.
Yes,
where it follows kung fu zombies. And that's the plot.
Yeah, and there's this moment where, not spoilers, but it's someone hits. Is it with a kick or with like a baseball bat or whatever?
There's a kick to the head.
A kick to the head. Yeah, I remember. However, I saw that. Because I don't know who, it wasn't on YouTube.
We showed it at school.
Oh, really?
The theater director.
Oh, wow.
Was just like, I don't know how, because I've got some humor in some of those shorts that I made back in the day that are like, oh dear, this is this is a little dark.
Yeah.
And we're just playing them at school events.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because however I saw it, but I was like, because I was toying with the idea of film schooling and, going through this career around junior, senior year. And then, I was, we had mutual friends showing me like Pulp Fiction and all this stuff. Because I didn't watch a lot of movies growing up, just Fantasia over and over. I'll do my shot-for-shot remake of that. But I remember seeing that movie, and there's a scene in it where someone kicks a zombie's head off, or to whatever degree. And the degree to which Zach like directed it, I like blew me away, because it's such a perfect cut from the moment he kicks to like he kicks a very what would you call it, like a poorly made whatever the prop is of the head.
It's just a prop like mannequin head.
Yeah, but it's so expertly done in like a 1980s kung fu movie sort of way that I was like blown away. I was like, yeah, I will make movies because you could do this in it. Yeah. So that was very influential to me. And like I remember I wrote my first like feature film script back when I was 18. Absolutely terrible, not correct formatting, not good whatsoever, not whatever. But there are like, you bring up maturity, and we're talking about maturity in this way. And maturity is, like you described, like a context thing, because every movie is technically immature because it's not a proven success or an obvious good work of art until it's completely made, which is like 4 years after whoever's writing it like comes up with the idea.
And even to start with, I mean, it's all like escapism. Like it's not to look at it as a commercial endeavor, like you said, is stupid, because 99% of the time you're not going to make any of your money back.
Exactly.
And also the whole thing is kind of like silly to a certain extent, because it's like, oh well, I want to tell this story that doesn't exist, and I need it to exist. It's like it's a mixture of like stupidity and ego.
Yes,
I
there's
guess.
like hubris in there.
Yeah.
And so there's like, because I have a pretty strong opinion on this documentary that I'll tell you here.
Yeah.
But there's like 5 contexts that I feel you can watch this in, because from what I've seen, the reactions are also very, not divided, but varied to this documentary. And I think it's because there's these 5 ways that you're inherently approaching this general endeavor. The first context is that you have old serial movies like Buck Rogers and Zorro in the 40s. And so those are just not supposed to be high art. They're supposed to be, telling a pulpy sort of story in whatever kind of way. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg love those when they're growing up. And so they want to make their own thing. And so that's what Indiana Jones is going to be. He's going to be their version of that. So then your second context is like Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is Steven Spielberg has done Jaws, and he's done a couple other movies. He's not who we know him today. He hasn't delved into like the serious side of filmmaking. He's the big blockbuster tentpole guy. So, but it's seen as like outrageously competent for that level of a movie. And then you get this third context of like, okay, they're 12 years old and they want to do it. And that's extremely identifiable to like everybody of like the magic of the movies. But then there's this fourth context of like, okay, now there are a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds running around Mississippi, dragging people behind cars and in front of
Yeah, like they
cars.
almost kill their friends on multiple occasions.
And lighting fires all the time.
They basically set fire to their basement and almost burn their house down.
Twice.
They drag somebody out of a car, and like he easily could have been horrifically injured.
10 different times, yeah. And then you have this fifth context of like, okay, now they're adults because they've the tape, their Indiana Jones tape, they send it to Spielberg when they're teenagers or whatever, and it gets lost along the way, or however it goes through the channel.
They play it one time. So 1989, it premieres at the, quote, auditorium of the local Coca-Cola plant in Gulfport, Mississippi, unquote. Which is wow. And then the boys forget about it. They go to college. None of them go into filmmaking. It's all forgotten until somehow Eli Roth, the groundbreaking director of films such as Hostel, is gifted a copy of this when he's in film school. Gives it to another guy, Harry Knowles, who is in charge of this like film festival. And this guy's like, this is the greatest thing ever created. So plays it at this film festival, and it's a massive hit. Like, everybody loves it because it's like, how awesome is this? You know, how awesome is it that it's these like 12, 13, they get up to 18 years old, but like very well redoing this movie, because this is the thing, like, I made student films when I was in high school. They're incompetently done. Like, any effect that I try to do looks awful, but like they have a lot of like a lot of forethought, a lot of genius on display, and just like this creativity that they brought to it, and it's awesome and it's lovely. And when you watch the documentary, everything that's about that is fascinating and awesome, and I loved it.
Yes.
But
here we go.
The documentary, probably 1/3 of it is them as 40-somethings shooting this helicopter scene. And I couldn't give a single fuck about any of the time spent in like present day in this documentary.
Because I think that this is, I had seen this once before, like back when it came out, I think, just by, it's on Netflix or whatever it's on at the time. And I remember like seeing red, basically, of like, this is probably one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen, like in human existence, because like these 5 contexts are like, okay, back in the 40s, they're just trying to make things to, entertain people and make these serials, Buck Rogers, Zorro, whatever. Raiders of the Lost Ark, very immature thing. He's an archaeologist and he fights and he does
with a whip,
punches Nazis and does all this sort of stuff, but outrageously well done, like you're saying, like the foresight, the forethought, and everything. The kids doing that, same sort of thing. But then you get to these 4th and 5th contexts of like, okay, but you're a teenager now, and they describe it, and there's many endearing moments. One of their first kisses is on camera with the co-star, and like that's very cool, and I love that. But then they're like getting distracted with their girlfriends and with, surprise, surprise, actual life, like. Because Jason, the special effects guy, is always saying like he's very practically minded, ironically, given how like imaginative and how incredible of a problem solver he is.
And I take it back. He did go into...
He went into some stuff.
Like sort of special effects stuff.
Yeah.
I don't remember in what context, but he kind of stuck with what he was doing in this role. But continue.
Because he says like... all the time of like, because he's saying when they're 13 years old of like, we're not going to blow up a plane, we're just going to do it as a miniature. And they always, it doesn't matter if they're like 12 or 13 or 45, they're always like, well, Jason's always like poo-pooing everything. And it's like the guy who's doing the incredible ghost effect, like at 12 years old.
Jason, who was doing everything for your damn movie.
Exactly. Yes. So you get to that point and I'm like, okay, I get it. Because that's literally everyone I went to film school with, of like, we're all 18 and we're all saying like, yeah, let's throw this giant, like throw the dice on, I think my dumb ideas are good and I want to struggle and make them better. But when their tape is discovered and they're rediscovered and they go around and play it, because they talk about another premiere when they're, or another screening when they reunite for the first time in 20 years, and they've suffered like divorces and drug addiction and all of this like legitimate real life stuff. I find this to be like, it's almost like in Spinal Tap, when he's like the Rob Reiner character is trying to like intellectualize the band, and they're like, so basically what you're doing then is you're sort of like putting yourself in an Arrested Development, almost like a stuffed moose or whatever, like on you, but you're doing that on purpose, right? And they're like are dumb, and so they're not doing. They are stuck at 17 years old mentally.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about this.
Totally.
Because it's so like everything that his son says is just outrageously pathetic. Like when he says, like, well, it took Spielberg $20 million to make Raiders of the Lost Ark, and my dad only needed his allowance. And it's like, it's an original screenplay and an original idea. Like, how stupid is this? Like, am I the only crazy one? Because you feel that way watching it. Like, you don't look at other people's reviews until after you've seen it.
Correct.
And it starts, they do it very well in the documentary, like with the fires, because they set the first fire on his back, on Indiana Jones' back in the basement, and they can't put it out because they're actually like fanning the flames.
Yeah, instead of just blanketing it, they're fanning it and actually making it worse.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, because they're children, so that's fine. And their parents shut it down, and they say, and everyone's okay with this because it makes sense because they lit a guy on fire in the basement.
Yeah.
And then, they, like you said, they bring in a guy from Dawn of the Dead or one of the Romero movies to watch them. He's just like adult supervision, but he doesn't care. And he's telling them what parts of the basement to light on fire. And I'm like, I've watched enough true crime stuff that like you're past my threshold of empathy at this point. Like if something happened, this is number 2. Fool me twice. And then they get to this. And it's like, now speaking on, especially in A Minor Diner, no one has an authority on anything. But like, as a director who tends to write in things that, writer-director, who tries to write in things that my producers like, give me a glare of like, we're going to do animals, we're going to do stunts, we're going to do outdoor shooting, Jesse. Like, okay, sure, fine, whatever. The amount of paperwork and the amount of like, competence and like you're saying foresight that you have to show to insurance companies and to actors and guilds and things like that is insane. When they do this plane thing, I fully empathize because they take it rains and it just keeps raining and they only have so much shooting time, and he's trying to take more time off of work.
Yeah, this guy has some dumb job, whatever.
Yeah.
Just adult job.
And I'll get to his job because I did a little bit of digging on what his story is. Yeah. And so he's trying to get time off of the job. And I'm like, well, I can imagine being his employer of like, you're taking time off of work
for what?
To shoot Raiders, which is already
made.
Yeah,
like this is already a movie
for whatever point.
And your adaptation is already a movie as well. Like
yes.
They say that they didn't finish the film, but the film has been released.
Yes.
You know, the adaptation was released in 1989 and then Eli Roth plays it in 2002. This has been done for a long time.
Yes. And even then, if you wanted to pretentiously or dishonestly, like, okay, we'll film the plane scene, but let's maybe make it look like it was originally in the 80s. They could very easily do that, but they say, no, we're going to spend $40,000 getting a plane made in whatever way. It has no brakes. The plane has to spin around in the movie, and there's all the crew guys holding it. Like, there's no brakes, so are we getting the shot or are we not getting the shot? But then they have to blow it up, and they get who you'd expect to get for $5 to blow up this thing.
Demolitions Bro.
Yes, and they're without giving, because you should watch it, without giving too much away. There's an incident on set, and the demolitions guy is the one affected by that, not the director or anyone else, because they're all far away. And just the atmosphere, like there's 2 things I would want to talk about in this way. There was a film that they were shooting about the Allman Brothers back in 2014, and they put this bed on railroad tracks, and there was like a dream sequence or whatever kind of thing. And they didn't coordinate with the railroad company. And so it's like 3:00 in the morning or midnight or whatever. And the train comes down the tracks and they're all trying to scramble everything off.
Oof.
And yeah, this young woman gets hit. It's not clear what the injuries were or whatever, but gets hit and killed like instantly. And so, yeah, in the film industry, if you say Sarah Jones, everyone is like, okay, yeah, slates, because we would all put on our slates for editing, like her name and everything of like, do your due diligence when it comes to safety. And a friend and my producing partner and I were talking about Resident Evil because they
Uh-huh.
just keep making Resident Evil movies.
Oh yeah.
And there was
Well never runs dry.
yeah, for some reason, none of them are about the games, but they're yeah. And there was this incident, I think on the latest one or the one before the latest one, where some stunt woman got like extremely maimed, like
Huh.
some motorcycle accident that was pointless, whatever. And you just kind of like in those moments, almost like a race car driver or an astronaut of like, what am I doing this thing
Yeah,
for that like could
yeah.
kill you? And it's like, if it's Lawrence of Arabia, that's somewhat excusable. But even then, only like 10% of
Yeah.
like, if the movie this person died or was injured on was incredible,
Uh-huh.
that's like 10% forgivable. It's mostly not. But like, if he tore his munitions expert to shreds on a remake of
A remake of Indiana Jones
That
that is already finished, and nobody cares about this last scene because they already like your adaptation. Your adaptation is charming because it is childish. It is
Yes.
it is immature, but because of that immaturity, like it's like one of those against all odds stories where it's like these kids showed so much creativity and just got out there and did it in a very like when we're talking about measured maturity, something that I really like I think people should keep in mind as they live their lives is like you got to take big swings sometimes.
Yeah.
You got to do the things that actually are really important to you and sometimes not really think about the consequences. But then this plane incident, it comes off as incredibly immature in the wrong way.
Yeah.
That it's like we are revisiting our youths, and I just need to do this thing because it was this thing that I did as a kid, and I it's like holding on to me, like I need to finish this, even though nobody cares. I'm almost gonna lose my job over this. And then if you're actually putting somebody's life in danger for this as well, it's like, no, this is not measured maturity. This is wrong. This
Yes.
is dumb. I'm not going to try to tell anybody how to live their lives, but if your stupid childhood fantasies put other people in danger, that means that they're wrong.
Exactly. Yes. And like he's a particular one because like we've said, Jason, who's their kind of like not techie, but weird theater friend who's
Yeah.
doing all the effects. He kind of goes on and has a measured response at 12 and at 30, whatever, like, or 40, whatever. He's fine. The guy that plays Indy, he goes through a lot of like personal tragedies and
Yeah.
stuff in his childhood and then drug addiction and kind of comes back. And it feels like he comes back just like, this is novel. This is fun. This is fine.
Yeah,
in whatever
like
sort of way.
I'm just the actor. I'm Indiana Jones. Like this is fine. I'll take a few days to do this.
Yes, exactly. And then Eric, the guy that mostly directed it, that did everything, I looked him up a bit, like looked at his site and everything. He did go to NYU for film,
Huh.
did do stuff in film, made a short that played all over the world, like original short, got awards. It was picked up for distribution, which is like unheard of with film. And then in the documentary, they say that he went out to LA and then it tried stuff and it didn't end up working. He ends up working for a video game company. I think it's Take-Two or 2K or something. And what they're talking about right now when he's like, I can't come to work because I'm shooting my Indiana Jones movie. And they're like, he's in charge of quality control or like play testing for, I think it's Borderlands or Borderlands 2, which is like a multi-billion-dollar franchise game.
Yes.
And so he's he has a successful enough whatever, but he's doing this. And they present this narrative in the documentary that I would want to, I have a bit of a stance to take here.
Okay.
They say like, it's this parental issue thing that families were disintegrating. And so the escapism of the movie was good. But then also Indy provided a very good father figure. Like he wasn't perfect, but they were all having trouble with their like sort of father figure. And it just begs this interesting comparison. Anyone is going to pale in comparison to what I'm about to say, but someone who also had a very famously like issues with his parents, especially his father figure, was a filmmaker named Steven Spielberg, who like famously every single movie is a daddy issue movie for about 50 years now. So in 1964, Spielberg made his first feature when he was 17 years old.
Oh, okay.
And it's called Firelight. And so he's not shooting on Betamax tapes, like even they are. Like we look at it today, like that indie remake is impossibly difficult because they don't even have digital editing, anything. They're like, it's a huge feat. But Spielberg's shooting that on film in like the 60s. And so he composed the music for it on his clarinet and then got his mother to transpose that into piano. And then his high school like orchestra band did the score for the movie.
Huh.
And so he shot it on weekends and evenings and like at his house, in his garage, around his whatever. And then he, for like $500, his dad said, you can have $500 for this or whatever. And then he premiered it for $1 a ticket. And he says someone accidentally paid $2. So he made $1 profit on his movie. And then he did not get accepted to USC.
Yeah.
And so he went and kind of wiggled his way into Universal in a pretty like, it's not shady way, but he like forced himself into Universal in a very bold way. And then all these years later, they're making an Indiana Jones 5. Spielberg is not directing it because he's 100,000 years old, and that would be an immature movie for him to make.
Yeah.
And it begs this question, exactly like you're saying, of there are noble, weird pursuits, like in the same way that you and I both have what we're literally doing every day, but then our artistic, like what we're both trying to do. And it's stupid on paper because it's not rational.
Nothing will ever, like with the music I make, like it will never in any conceivable way, like work out financially. If I were to put together all of the hours I've spent learning about music production and then were to put on like what I made the hourly rate based on how much money I've made doing music stuff, it would be like cents. It would be like hundredths of cents to the hour.
And that's the thing, is it's like, okay, maturity is, because it's exactly what you should be debating when you're going to get married to someone, of like, are they going to change, and what sort of ways are they going to mature and evolve? Because everyone does. But it's like, you're doing that artistic endeavor because it brings meaning and joy to your life. Like you do things to put food on the table, and the dream when you're 5 is that those are the same thing.
Yeah.
But then you get like exactly to this point where it's like a famous, it happens often enough in the film industry. I'm going to just double mortgage my house to do my dumb little indie movie, whatever. At the very least, it's a noble endeavor. Like it could be the worst thing ever made. Like The Room is like still like, yeah, but is The Room based on anything? It's a sole like original creation out of nowhere. Did it work? No, but then it did work.
Yeah. And exactly the same with this adaptation. Like it didn't really work, but then it worked.
And
like
then they went
20 years after.
Yes, and then they couldn't be, because now they tour it. Like he's got an RV with that all on the side of like, it's Raiders, the fan film, you know? And it's like, I don't know of a 15-year-old today that's seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, it's an 80s movie that's fine. It's not, that's the main thing. And that's as far as I'll go in this discussion of maturity. He makes Raiders in 1982.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good. And everyone agrees it's pretty great and everything like that. But then when you get to maturity and what it's like to be, what kind of films do I want to be making and this and that, a matter of whatever, 12, 18 months later, he's making E.T., and I don't, this is like completely subjective, pedantic point I'm going to make. If I was a teenager in the 80s, I would see, cool, Nazi history, sort of fun, beating them up, great, wonderful. You see E.T., and it's like, what if we do a remake of E.T.? Because E.T. is, but even then,
E.T. is immeasurably better.
In every sort of way.
In every single way.
And it's like and again, because he's nominated for Best Picture for Jaws, because it's insane out of nowhere thing. But then I don't think he gets too much until E.T. And then it's like, here's 11 nominations, or however many it was, including Best Picture. Because he took a movie about a little boy meeting an alien, like just the most schlocky, worst 1890s like premise, and made it unbelievably like heartfelt and perfect.
Yeah.
And to be these kids, I commend them for their perseverance and their artistic vision, because they are truly, like you say, inherently very, very talented, very competent. But then to almost throw away their actual like youth on this thing and then jeopardize their actual lives and their families' lives.
They've got families. It's
so stressful. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is the thing. Like, to go back to the point, I think everybody should have some immaturity. I think everybody should try to, like, don't let those dreams just be dreams, kind of, Shia LaBeouf thing. But at the same time, like, measured maturity is a good thing to have. Like, it's a good technique, because we all know that person that's like, just like tried a thing for their entire life, and it was just this one, their one goal or whatever was, let's say, to be an actor, and then they're 45 years old and they've been an extra for 30 years, and it's like, this was it. Like, you just had the one life, and this was all you did with it.
Yes. And if it makes you happy,
if it
that's
makes
fine.
you happy, there's no reason for me to judge you.
But that expectation of like, I'm 45, but when I'm 50, it's gonna hit.
It's gonna hit.
And it's gonna hit like I imagined it when I was 18.
Yeah.
It's like you have the train set in your basement, and you're the weird train set guy who just spends all his money on this miniature train set. Great, fine, amazing, wonderful.
Yep.
But then it's like, no, what if we get a mortgage on the house, honey? And then like I do something with this to try to, like, people care about trains. I'm going to restart the electric train industry in America, whatever. It's, to your point, I think it's nothing but applause for the general effort of, like, I mean, they're in Mississippi in the 80s. I can't imagine the hellish landscape to try to get a movie made.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, even Shia is in one Indiana Jones movie, and then he gets out. Like, there's a time and place to.
There's a time and place for Indiana Jones. There's a time and place for maturity and immaturity, and we're going to look at that a little in a different sense with our dessert.
And for our dessert this month, we would encourage you to exercise your maturity in opening a critical eye with this dish. 95% of everyone on the planet lives in a civilization, right? So an area that is deliberately constructed. But most people treat this like it's a naturally occurring thing and don't think twice about what they see, because that would be overwhelming to consciously think about every single thing you see.
Yeah.
So if you go to the forest and you see a waterfall, that's like a naturally occurring thing that you would notice and could appreciate in whatever sort of way. But when you go downtown, that building that you might see is the result of one, if not thousands of people's combined efforts and creative inputs. It didn't just pop up being the dimensions it is or the color or the shape. There's a deliberacy to all of it. So the work of art that we're serving you today is meant to feel like it's an organic thing, that it was always there, like magic. But the reality is that it's the result of millions of choices that hundreds of artists collaborated on and made cohesive. In the mid-1960s, a group of people exposed a cavern in Southern California, but they didn't actually dig it out because it's not actually underground. Hint, hint. They pumped 630,000 gallons of water inside so that visitors could float by and marvel at the flora, fauna, and fellows inside, who aren't actually flora, fauna, and fellows, but audio animatronic robots, each with their own unique articulating appendages. In 1966, Walt Disney passed away, but 3 months later, the very last Disneyland ride that he oversaw opened in New Orleans Square section of the park and unbattened its hatches under the name Pirates of the Caribbean.
Wow. And now everybody just thinks of those movies every time we talk about Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
But how bad are any of those movies but the first one?
I was about to very ardently stand up and defend against that.
The first one's good.
Yeah,
the first one's a really good movie.
The first one is like, you can make these weird, you're getting older arguments, and so everything was better when I was a kid. But like, Curse of the Black Pearl is
Kerpert or Burr.
yeah, whatever that's called. that is like a perfect movie. Like and it's completely accidental and because that was a terrible set and like there's so much behind the scenes stuff that happened on that. But yeah, unfortunately, it's such a perfect movie that like, pirates, like the Johnny Depp and the monkey and whatever.
Yeah. Johnny Depp and the monkey.
Yeah. Pirates of the Caribbean was designed because Disneyland opened in 1955. And so there were a couple different sections of the park, but they didn't have New Orleans Square. And Walt sort of, by the time Disneyland opened, he's very like, he's overseeing what's happening with the movies, but he's like into the theme park. He's like, this is
my thing.
This is my Mecca. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I've created a world. This is my Eden. I am
this
God.
is my Eden.
And so, yeah, New Orleans was like, they had just gone to the World's Fair, and Disney had made these like new sorts of rides and great moments with Mr. Lincoln, which is audio animatronic robot Lincoln standing up out of the chair and talking to people.
Blew everybody's mind.
Yeah, because he looks like he should. Because I think they have his death mask or something that they use to make a very flattering thing to think about, that your sort of reanimated dead corpse is at a theme park. But yeah, they sort of take that technology and then they want to make this New Orleans section of the park. And he's got this idea of like a haunted house, and maybe you can walk around. And then there's a wax museum of like pirates or whatever, and you can walk around. Because Disney was born in like the late 1800s. So
where people walk.
Yeah, he's like, it's like a museum. Everything's a museum. And there's lots of trees. But yeah, that's my favorite section of the park. We'll get into my Disneyland, whatever. But
our travel chef, Jesse, is a Disneyland lover.
Yes. And very, I don't want to use the word explicitly, but yes, I am not an appreciator or a liker. I love Disneyland.
Yep.
I don't care for any other theme park or any other whatever. I don't like amusement parks. There's a huge difference between Disneyland and other things. But he is overseeing Pirates of the Caribbean, and it sort of takes on this new, and what if there was this, and what if there was this, and this, and this. Normally a ride, you measure it in terms of like duration or the amount of passengers it'll eat up.
Yeah.
So like an average ride at Disneyland or any theme park is like 3 to 4 to 5 minutes or whatever. Pirates is like 18 to 20 minutes on those boats. And so when it comes to maturity, you have a couple different ways to look at Pirates. Pirates is this dish that you have definitely taken a bite out of if you've been alive since the 70s, or like basically like it's dropped in Jurassic Park. Like the line is whatever of like, it's like a theme park here. And then he says, yeah, but when you ride Pirates of the Caribbean, they don't come alive and eat you or shoot you or whatever. It's always been kind of like Disneyland's crown jewel ride where you just sit in a boat in the water, but for some reason this is why.
Yeah, and it was all like it was interesting doing some research for this because opens in 1967, and like these audio robot animatronics, these are a brand new thing.
Yeah.
So this this ride opens and people are mind blown.
Yes.
And I just remember going when I was a child to Disneyland and like going on Pirates of the Caribbean and being like, whatever. Where's Space Mountain?
Yes, well, Space Mountain's awesome as well. But yeah, because like that's sort of what I mean when okay, I'll give you an example of my Disneyland appreciation. Because when the base chef and we went out to lunch one time, I think the store, our restaurant had shuttered its doors for a bit, so we could take a
we
break.
had to eat somewhere else for once.
Yes. And so my Instagram feed at that time was like every fifth picture is me at Disneyland because I'm there like 3 or 4 times, or I went there however many times in a 4-year span. And you were saying something to the effect of like, that's very like uncharacteristic of what I know of you, of like you're into like Holocaust history and whatever, but then you're always posing in front of Disneyland.
You're always at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Like the love of Disneyland was always like I love people who are like contradictions of themselves, and that was one of your like contradictions.
Yes, because Disney, and that's another thing. There's a huge difference. It's just like what's the least controversial way I could say this? It's just like any famous empire or country where there's the emperor, and then there's like the navy and the military, and then the people in charge of domestic affairs. So there's like very, very different departments. So you can't blame this wartime atrocity of this country on like the people who are just trying to like grow the trees in the imperial garden. And so the parks department at Disney is very different from their animated section and their live action section and their every stupid thing they're doing these days section.
Yeah, because, okay, so just talking about, Disneyland as a whole.
Yeah.
And I know that you have way more love for Disneyland than Disney World, but my story is Disney World.
Yeah.
I went to Disneyland and Disney World as a kid at some point, but the most recent time that I went, 6-7 years ago, I don't remember, I was like freshly out of college, and my friend, good friend of mine, had been hired by the Disney College program.
Oh, right.
And
yeah.
so was down in Orlando, and she said, if you buy a plane ticket to Orlando and come see me, I will give you a free 3-day pass to Disney World. And I'm like, I could make that work.
Yeah.
So I went down to see her, and under the context of this Disney World trip. And as some diners may know, but maybe I cover it up well here on this show, I can be a bit of a snarky asshole, and it's hard for me to really like tap into this like childlike charm. Like I think of Disney and I'm like, fucking capitalist. like oh my god, the movies they made were so horrible in terms of this and this racism, and then like they're buying up everything. And I just like don't like Disney as a company. But and like I was kind of expecting myself to be a little bit unimpressed with Disney World, and I like the bitter asshole inside of me was no match for the like the magic of just seeing all these kids like living their dream.
Yeah.
Like really, having the best moments of their young lives so far, and just seeing the magic on display was like, no, I get this. I am on this team.
Yeah.
I don't like you, Disney, but I am on your team for theme parks.
In this specific flag.
Yeah.
Sort of like the Japanese army in World War II. Like they have different flags. This is the Navy. This is the people, whatever. Yeah, because like you wouldn't do Disneyland as a whole work of art. So like Pirates is sort of the emblematic one of, I think, maturity. To give you an example of like you're saying, the level of, because I think you can mature into, like growing up, there was a theme park in the city that you could go to. And I think it was the Six Flags at that point.
Used to be.
Yeah.
No longer is, but it was a Six Flag.
And that's fine and fun. But I remember being young, and that's cool, and that's great. And then I was a teen, and I was over it instantly. And then someone tried to get me to go there in my 20s, and I was like, I have absolutely no interest in that.
Yeah.
Whereas Disneyland, and then we'll get to Pirates, but Disneyland, I do think that you can grow to focus on, like I'm saying, the critical eye to like, how are they making this experience so cohesive and make it work? Like an example of this would be, I went in May of 2016, and this was like the second time I had been there that year after like a 15-year break. We went after 9/11, and then we never went again.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where I had to get all my Disneyland stuff out there by doing it 8 times in like 3 years. But yeah, went there and was the same sort of way of like, Disneyland's the best thing ever, and it's so cool, and this and that. And there was a friend who was in California at the time. I was there alone that day. I showed up. I was like, great. I can show up exactly when they open, and I don't have to carry anyone around, and I can do exactly what I want to do. And she found out I was there, and like brute force invited herself of like, we're not going to do what we want to do. I want to see whatever it is about this place. Like, what's the way which you engage with this place?
Uh-huh.
And so she showed up by the afternoon, And then we went to dinner there on Main Street, and we walked out. And this is 2016, so they're doing construction on Star Wars Land.
Ooh, okay.
And so 10% of the park is kind of closed for whatever, and that includes the train. And the train has been going around the outer berm of Disneyland since 1955. It's one of the opening day rides.
Okay.
And that is not running. And so they have the trains parked at the stations because they think that people might want to go walk up and look at them or whatever, because they're charging $150 a ticket and it's 100 degrees. And so maybe people will want to go see trains. And in this case, they were correct that I looked over and saw the train, and then it had the passenger car on the back that Walt named after his wife. And it's like the luxurious sort of, only for the special occasions.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, wow, I should definitely go check that out, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You go look at this train. And so we go walking over there and up the ramp, and she's like looking at me of like, this is exactly what I meant. Like, this is exactly the fly on the wall sort of thing I wanted to see. And we get there, and the tour guide, there's a guide there, and then the guy who has to be there, the conductor, the engineer, or whatever, because it's California and you can't just leave an operating vehicle on its own. But he's kind of dirty and working on doing whatever. And so the guide is there, and she's nice and smiling, and she says a bunch of things, and I smile and nod and pretend that I don't know everything that she's telling me about the train. And then she's like, well, and do you have any like questions about the train or anything like that? And I'm like, yes, actually I do. The train is not going to be going around Star Wars Land. It's going to go between Star Wars Land and Frontierland. It's getting squeezed out in this way. And so technically, for the first time ever, it's going to be doing a left-hand turn, because they go clockwise around the park, and they'll be doing a left-hand turn. And so these are the original trains and somewhat the original tracks. Are there any kind of altercations you have to do to the train to get it to, is it going to do a left that easily? And like the body posture, like the young woman I was with was like equally like embarrassed and mortified and then like delighted at that level of whatever. And then the conductor, the engineer guy, like straightened up and like looked out as if he was in like, this is what I was waiting for. This is what I've been called for. And he like looks at me with this sort of like, I'm going to educate you, but we're not really going to have a discussion here because I'm way above your pay grade.
Yep.
He's like, he's like, well, do you know what camber is? And I was like, because I wanted to be a race car driver when I was young. And so camber is the degree that something is tilted.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I know what camber is. Do you know what kind of caster are these trains running? Because caster is the angle that the axle, like that the wheel is mounted. And you get this like outrageously bright smile from this guy who's like, this is what I work here. And so we talk for like 38 minutes about why this train is going to be doing this left-hand turn. And that's an easy answer, but it's a lot of camber and easy, whatever. But that's when I go there. There's this general experience because they are a film company and they're in charge of making a perception of something. And so when you go down Main Street, there's a music and there's a vibe. And then you go to a different land and all of a sudden it's different.
Yeah.
And like the laws of reality and physics dictate that like, okay, but two loudspeakers projecting two different types of music is going to sound like absolute crap where they meet. And it's going to be this terrible cacophony or whatever you want to call it. But like there's a building on Main Street, I guess, that would best empathize this. Like when I go and I tour guide people around Disneyland, and I recommend 5 days if you want to see every single thing at Disneyland. Disney World is like 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah,
but
you live there now.
Yes, exactly. But there's this building on Main Street that's like classic American Main Street, turn of the century, whatever. But then on the other side is the Jungle Cruise, and it's a restaurant that somehow seamlessly has to operate as on one side this facade, on one side this facade. And like the level that they engineer the speakers, how they hide those to what levels that you easily transition and it sounds good all the time. There's so much. It's my second favorite place on the planet. We'll get to my first on our
someday.
Yes, the first is a way bigger footprint, but they just the attention. What I like there is the attention to detail, and there's, like you said, There's the element when you're a kid. This is all for me. This is the best playground I could ever have.
Yep.
But even as a adult, like everyone there is committed, not in a Scientology sort of cult way, but they're like, it would behoove all of us if we just tried to have a good time here while we're here, because this is explicitly what this is for.
Yeah.
So we're not going to lie to you, but it's like, just be nice to us and we'll be nice to you. And that's the agreement, is that we're going to have a heightened niceness or whatever. And so, yeah, like usually whenever I'm at Disneyland, you can go to the guest services and complain about employees if you wanted to. Okay. But at Disneyland, you can also compliment them, and they'll get like a mark for that or a raise for that or whatever. So I went and made sure.
You get a Mickey sticker.
Yeah, exactly, an extra.
You get one Mickey buck.
Yes, in your 401k. Yes. So I went that day, and I was like very complimentary toward him. But like Pirates is the supreme example of this, is what I mean. Of whenever you just stop, there's a tree near in New Orleans Square that's one of the original trees that was there when it was an orange grove.
Okay.
And then Disneyland has a berm around it that the train is on top of, so that you can never see the skyline of the place that you're in. So it's like you're in this alternate world, whatever. But then you have these moments with like, oh, right, I'm in the middle of an orange grove 70 years ago, and now there's like an underground Pirates lair that is however much money to make it for no reason other than like this guy kind of invented syncing sound to cartoons in the 20s and then he wanted to make like a ride about pirates where, like you say, robots don't really exist to the point where anyway to get to Pirates, there's a level of maturity, because like when I first did it, 9/11 happened 3 weeks ago, and I'm somewhat aware of that as a 9-year-old. But there's a restaurant in Disneyland Hotel called Goofy's Kitchen, and you can put peanut butter on your pancakes, and it's just wacky and crazy, and I'm having the best breakfast ever. And then today we're going to go to Pirates of the Caribbean, and I don't really like intense rides or baby rides, so I'm not quite sure what to make of this. And then you go on the ride, and then there's this nice tranquil bayou scene, and there's a restaurant in there that you can eat at. Yeah. And my little like architectural brain is like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then you turn the corner, because I'm like, okay, so this will be, I like National Geographic documentaries at the time. So I'm like, oh, cool, okay, Caribbean, and we're going to look at pirate exhibits or whatever. And then you turn the corner, and there's like a animatronic skull, but it doesn't look bad. It's like an actual human skull, basically screeching like "dead men tell no tales," and then you're going to jump down 2 stories of like, vertical drop in that sort of way, and you turn the corner, and there's like a skeleton with a sword through its whatever. Mickey just served me peanut butter pancakes, and now there's like a skeleton steering a ship. And there's like, it just looks and I'm just, hell yeah, this is like, I'm sad about 9/11.
Super metal.
Yeah, but I was like, yes, Fantasia, the ending one where everything's demented. So when it comes to maturity, and like Pirates especially, because Pirates is not an intense ride. Like you're saying, you could ride it as a 6-year-old. Yeah. And it's like, this is dumb, and this is stupid, and it's so janky and stilted. But there's this sort of ship of Theseus thing, is a Greek parable that's like, if you have a ship and the amount of planks on that ship, if you have to trade out one of those planks every month, in like 5 years, when every plank has been traded to a new one and it's completely upgraded, is that the same ship? It's none
the
of
same with your skin cells. Are you the same person?
Exactly. And so Pirates, and specifically why I differentiate myself from other Disneyland fans, because they have this like, this is the best place I've ever been when I was 5, and it must remain this way. Like nothing can ever change at Disneyland. When Walt's general premise is that one of the spires on the castle is left unpainted as a symbolic, like it will always be under construction. Pirates is always a contentious issue for Disney people, because they change things to accommodate the times. Because Pirates is supposed to be this cartoonish look, almost like the Wild West. The Wild West existed for 5 minutes, and
Yeah.
everyone acts like it's like this big cultural thing that we have to preserve.
Because we've just made it that way.
Yes,
but
exactly.
It's the closest thing Americans can have to culture. I
Yes,
guess.
exactly. So like if you ever had like a woman cowboy, it's like, well, that's just like an agenda thing. It's like, well, it was 18 months 150 years ago. So it's like, it's only so preposterous because history flattens itself through time.
Yeah.
And so pirates, they're a bit surly, and they're a bit, not the best characters, like of morally or ethically.
You're not generally looking for pirates for like moral, like to align your moral compass.
Exactly. And so pirates, there's a few moments, like famous moments. There's like when you drop down after a few whatever, and there's like men chasing after women because they've been out at sea and they want to the experiences of the flesh, however you want to put that. And so then they swap that around in the 80s or 90s to be the women are chasing the men because the men are trying to take the food that the women have.
Yeah.
And Antacion, who's this Xavier Antacion, is like one of the Imagineers, is what they call their Disney employees at the parks. He wrote the lyrics for the song "Pirate's Life for Me," and did Haunted Mansion and a bunch of other stuff. He was like, well, now that they changed it to that, it's more like the Boy Scouts of the Caribbean. And it's like, I mean, it's a movie, or it's a company with a talking mouse. So like, this is a bit tricky to like all of a sudden, but it's weird because of the level of accuracy and everything. And so that's where you get this weird, it's supposed to feel authentic, like Pirates of the Caribbean. Because Pirates of the Caribbean, Johnny Depp meets Keira Knightley and like has a completely fine encounter with her on a deserted island, like in the middle of nowhere. Would not happen in a non-Disney movie. Like there'd be some other things that would happen there. And so the famous one that's always been everyone's issue is that there's a scene where men are auctioning off women.
Yeah.
And the redhead is kind of proud to be auctioned off. Like she's proud that she's fetching a higher price than everyone else. And that's always been seen as this like archaic thing to display. And half of me is like, well, it's the 1870s, 60s, whatever, 1890s. And like that happened to some degree. And so I'm not going to get on the exact same boat of like, oh, can you possibly believe that such behavior would be permitted after I've just seen this skeleton with like reaching for gold with like a skull or a dagger through its skull. But then the other half is like, no, it's great. It's actually fine. And morally, I'm great with it too. Like it's a weird sort of dynamic they have there. And so they've changed it in the last 10 years to now, I believe, I haven't been on it. I think I've been on it once before quarantine and everything, to where that redheaded woman is now in charge of this.
She is, yeah. So it used to say, take a wench for a bride. But now the redhead is like leading this like flea market of some sort where they're like buying chandeliers and whatever.
Yeah. And it's like,
because that's what pirates
yes,
did.
Exactly. And now she's been like a mascot. Like you can get stuff like she's kind of this figure that will walk around New Orleans Square. And people have this thing, because like there's two that I will get to when it comes to this, because like you're talking about maturity. And so do we just continually update Pirates of the Caribbean to fit the cultural standards of wherever we're at? Like all of a sudden, imagine this nightmare of all nightmares. America insanely regresses on its racial politics, and 150 years from now, it is white supremacist beyond belief.
Yeah.
Do you now alter Pirates to reflect that sort of subjugation of whatever? Or is Pirates supposed to represent the time it represents? And so like my what is immature and what is like what is pointless to hold on to, or what is meaningful to hold on to, like what dilutes the work of art. There are two things in my mind. The first being, I wrote it before the movie came out, and so there was no Jack Sparrow. There is none of the lore. Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride, is supposed to be this like cautionary tale towards chasing money. Because if you look at it, you go down, you see all these dead people reaching for money, and then you see them battling, like trying to invade, and then they're like ransacking this town, and then the town catches on fire and explodes, and then you go up a waterfall as if like, okay, that was Hades, that was the depths. And so money and consumerism, it's cheaper to attend Disneyland at this time, but that's like the lesson here. But then Pirates comes out, and they started incorporating Jack Sparrow into it. They put in animatronics, and so some of it is fun and funny in whatever sort of way that's like, I mean, 6-year-olds, it's nice for them. Like, that's the guy from the TV, from the ride that this is. Like, that's great. But then at the very end, Jack Sparrow's in this room with like all the loot and all the treasure singing the Pirate's Life for Me song. And it's like, okay, that's a sellout move. Like we've talked about in another dish, that's now not the point of the ride. The point of the ride is this weird superficial aesthetic, like this is what Pirates in the Caribbean look like at no point in history now, because there's no frame of reference. And so like that's something that I get his integration, but that I feel like that's an immature move on their part. That's a bit of a short-sighted, especially with Johnny Depp as of lately, is now that they've officially like distanced, because he used to work directly for the company, and now they've officially divorced, and now they have an audio animatronic that's millions of dollars. There's 3 or 4 of them in that ride parading around, like, oops.
Yeah.
But then,
whoopsie.
Yeah, like the one thing on the converse side of it, like I would riot and I would boycott, and that wouldn't mean anything to them, but I would write a strongly worded email. There's these 2 pirates, you go under this bridge, and one of them is like so happy to be like taking a dirt bath with these pigs, and it's like disgusting to look at. And then there's one that's like drinking on the bridge above you, and his foot is swinging, and his foot is like super dirty, and it's just like this repulsive sort of scene. If they ever took the dirty foot pirate out of here, I think that's too far. I think society at that point has progressed too far. It's a regression of our values.
That is where you draw the line, as the dirty foot pirate.
Yeah. But it's ultimately like, whenever I ride that ride, I always love it because it's a good 20-minute get out of the sun, just like marvel at, like you said, so much tech on such display.
Yep.
But then to be able to recognize that, to like not just let it wash over you as like, oh, this is always here and it's always been whatever. But then I'm usually struck by the level of immaturity displayed by the people who go on it, because I've eaten at that restaurant as well. I had to take a month to get the reservation for that. Very overpriced. Fine. Food's okay, but you get to say that you went there. Immature thing to do. It's a weird way to flaunt that you went to a theme park
and
like
you ate
restaurant
at the theme park
by the water.
Yeah.
Like, but because it's a weird Pirates, like they make candles that smell like the water there, because the water has a certain smell. Because if it was just, because it's like 600,000 gallons of water, and so if they just disinfected it with standard chlorine, it would smell abysmal in that whole thing.
I bet.
And so they added whatever to it, and people buy candles of it. And I think that's approaching the line of like, so what other personality do you have? Like, what do you actually like? What is Disneyland truly your place to be? But as far as it comes to measured maturity, I think that's like a pinnacle of the defiance of maturity, that like, no, we're going to do this because it can be done. Yeah. It's around the same time as the moon landing, but it's the same thing of like,
but we just want to do this, so we're going to do it. And I think it's one of those big swings that like it works. And like on the other end, so that those are the people, making it, they're taking this big swing, right?
Yeah.
And then so you talked about the skull and crossbones man who's like warning you of dangers ahead, and then you do that waterfall drop, right? And I think that's like, it's kind of awesome because you get that like childlike, ooh, what's gonna happen next? Like, I'm excited, we're ready. You get this like childlike energy where the unknown is exciting. You can't wait to see what comes next. But the reason that they added that wasn't, like part of it was like, that would be fun, but it wasn't the main point. The reason that they did it is because Disney had to move guests below the train tracks.
Yep.
Because there were train tracks above, and we had to somehow get these people a little bit more quote unquote underground. And so it's kind of like, it's this weird almost middle ground between this maturity and the immaturity, because it is this thing that this waterfall drop like breeds this awesome childlike immaturity in us.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that only has happened because we maturely thought logically, what do we need to do to make us go under these train tracks? I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense, but what my last basic point is that I think immaturity and maturity and like just accepting things as they are, or like really logically thinking about them, are like both really important skills that everybody should keep throughout their entire life, but generally people swing one way or the other and it causes them some harm.
Yes, because I think there's a tendency to fall into that arrested development, that like that is a child thing and I am no longer a child, therefore it is no longer for me.
Yeah.
But like you said, when you go to Disneyland and you go to the entrance of Pirates of the Caribbean, you're 2 stories in the air. But you don't know that because they've subtly altered the incline of the actual paths and everything. And like, I remember as a final note on like what it means, like a moment that I matured, and I feel that wrongfully so, I felt I matured past my parents, but also past like Disney fans in general, was when we wrote it. I was like, this is just the best thing ever, because I'm a Fantasia kid, and so it's like all the music is like syncing to the action of what's happening, synchronized with the action of what's happening. And you turn this corner and you see this like just perfect postcard iconic scene of like these 3 guys in jail, and there's this dog with like the loop of keys to get out, and they're like trying to offer the bones. And it's like kind of known as the postmark image because it's so innocent and simple. And then you watch, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it on our old bad TV in the living room at home for family movie night, The Curse of the Black Pearl. And there's this moment where Jack Sparrow is in jail, and then there's the dog there, and he takes the bone out. And I'm like, this is like 2 or 3 years after we've gone to Disneyland. I like jump up of like, oh my God, they're doing it. And then the dog comes over with the ring and he's doing the thing. I'm like, from the ride. And no one knows what the hell I'm talking about. And then no Disney fan, like when I went to middle school, is like, yeah, because they did the dog key thing. And it's literally like the ride, even though it's not the ride at all. I was like, who gives, like, whatever. And so it's that level of like, okay, I'm going to check out for a bit. I'm going to hold on to my Disney stuff. But that's, I guess, when I got more introverted and more whatever. But yeah, like you're saying, it's taking conscious handfuls of maturity, and then measuring that maturity against the actual practical value of it.
And if you didn't like that, also on the menu this month, Naked Flames, 24/7, 365. This is outsider lo-fi techno that makes you feel as if you're a grainy VHS Keanu Reeves at a rave where everyone has to dance over 50 miles an hour.
Black Midi put out Cavalcade. The young London post-punk foursome takes a hard left turn into jazzy avant-prog, showcasing their frenetic inability to stand still.
Perturbator, Lustful Sacraments. The French synthwave pioneer moves on from his earlier cyberpunk filmscapes, puts on a boatload of black eyeliner, and buys a Romanian castle for his gothic club events.
And as I'm sure you've heard, Olivia Rodrigo put out her debut album, Sour. Rodrigo brings a wonderful pop-punk energy and occasionally collegiate vocabulary to tales of high school romance and despair, proving that sometimes clumping cliches together can provide a breath of fresh air. It's been a pretty good month, but yeah. I think I would actually like to go see those fish that you're talking about, the little fishes.
Wait, no. We've still got notes to the chefs to read. We received all these nice letters from our guests.
Fine. Sounds good.
Just like 5 more minutes before the fishies, Jesse.
Just hurry up. Come back to the kitchen. Whatever.
So we asked all of you lovely guests to tell us, which artist do you think sold out at some point in their career? We got some great answers. First, we had Ren and Josh from Chicago. They answered Muse. So they said Muse started off as marginally more musically talented rock musicians who used interesting instruments, and then they agreed to be in Twilight and become the darlings of people like Glenn Beck with Resistance.
Yeah, that's it's weird to think about that 10 years ago, what they used to be and what they are
Yeah.
now.
Oh man. To go from Absolution to Drones in like under 10 years is an interesting path.
Right. And likewise, from 20 years ago, Arthur from Brighton answered Fall Out Boy. They started making teen emo music before leaving that trend for a new one, making awful dubstep radio pop now.
I've often said the only thing worse than 2005 Fall Out Boy is 2015 Fall Out Boy.
I mean, it was like a good mood and good vibe for a summer there. And then, yeah, it was like, oh, we're actually going back to school liking Fall Out Boy unironically. Yeah. And then, yes, yeah, now that they're in Wreck-It Ralph 2 doing dubstep.
Oh,
it's
God.
Just, yeah,
Oh, dear.
a living hell. But what about you? Like, who would you say at some point selling out?
I don't remember if I said this in the last episode, but my go-to answer for this is always Metallica. They were a band that only got famous through like illegal tape tradings of their cassette tapes. Like that's how they got their start, and then to kind of go up against all of that and sue Napster when they already have $100 million bajillion dollars was, I think, a move that betrayed their ethos.
Yeah, that's a spicy meal that will be served at some point.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
And what about yourself?
Well, this is going to be a bit of a hot dish and a hot take on this one, but bear with me. I'm going to go Beyonce.
Ooh.
Because Beyonce was a third of a sort of pop trio, girl, whatever, bubblegum pop, movie star, whatever. Then put out Sasha Fierce, and Sasha Fierce is like a not perfect album in whatever sense, but a very perfect collection of singles that is amazing. Kind of faltered a little bit. And then with the winds of change where music now has to say directly exactly what its political statement is, I feel that Beyonce was like, actually, that's what I was doing the whole time. And I kind of disagree that sampling Stevie Nicks for Bootylicious is a political statement. But anyway, yeah, I don't feel that she has weathered the transition that she's trying to make. Maybe we'll give her a couple more albums. But
well, I hope you are you've got some bodyguards so nobody jumps you outside of A Minor Diner for saying anything bad about Beyonce.
I like Sasha Fierce more than any of you guys do, but it's, I appreciated back when it was a bit more intricate songwriting, intricate production, and not like Formation. I don't want to hear anyone over the age of 15 defend the composition of Formation. I don't care what it is. Like anyway. But we love hearing from our patrons, and so another thought-provoking question that we would like to offer to you: what work of art intended for children has remained meaningful as you've matured?
So what is something that you saw or listened to or whatever as a child that as you've gotten older, as you've crossed the threshold into adulthood, you feel that it still has that poignancy and meaning in your later life?
So just float those answers on by here at A Minor Diner. Write to us at aminordiner@gmail.com. or check us out on Instagram or Facebook, or comment on YouTube.
Yep. So thank you so much for dining with us tonight. Be sure to thank your hostess, Ms. Mandy Groves, on your way out. Wave to Edward Tart on keys. A Minor Diner is recorded on location and produced by Epicene Motion Picture Company.
Can I go now, please?
Yes. Fine.
Come on, everybody. Let's look. Little turtle.
Little turtle. Let's go.